Okay, I think we can get started. So hi, everybody. My name is Lily Kazemi, and I'm the editor of DAOFitLive. I want to first thank all of you for being here today. This is a little bit of a pilot event, just to give some context and opportunity for engagement for the blog posts that DAOFitLife has been doing. We're now in our second year, and those of you who have been there for all or maybe even part of the journey, I just want to thank you all for your support. It's really fun to get your feedback on what works and what doesn't work. So I hope that we can continue that process. So this is the first LinkedIn live event. So bear with me if there's any audio or technical issues. Like, these things will probably get better as we go along. But I thought it was just great to be able to talk to you guys about some of the recent posts, especially now that it is January 26th and we're in the first part of the year. I thought it was a perfect chance to talk about New Year's resolutions and my alternative approach, which I blogged about, which is replacing New Year's resolutions with habits instead. So we're going to talk a little bit about resolutions versus habits. And then we're going to talk about 5 habits that you can start doing, and you don't have to do them all at once, but 5 habits you can start doing to have a more fit and more productive workday. And the 5 habits are starting your morning the right way, proactively. The second habit is allocating specific time blocks for tasks and emails. The third habit is moving during the midday. The fourth habit is eating an energizing, not a coma-inducing lunch. And the fifth habit is watching the timing of caffeine intake. So we'll start at the beginning, and I'll explain to you why I don't believe in New Year's resolutions that much, except for maybe that you shouldn't say Happy New Year past January 20th. And the reason for that is that resolutions, especially fitness-related ones, are a setup for failure. I mean, the statistics don't lie. About 80% of fitness-related resolutions fail. And think about why that is. It's twofold. One, the goals are unrealistic and vague, because a lot of people have resolutions like, I need to get back into shape, or I need to lose 10 pounds. It's arbitrary. Why not 9? Why not 11? And the second reason is because a lot of them are contingent upon really extreme either diets or fads. Like, for example, I'm sure a lot of you have heard or maybe are even doing dry January. And I think that's great. Reducing alcohol intake is always a good idea. Or the Whole30 diet, for example, I know is a popular New Year's resolution starter because it's a structured program of 30 days. But would you bet your 401k account on you never drinking a drop of alcohol or ingesting a grain of sugar again? I mean, I wouldn't. So that's just like an example of how there's no sustainable solution here. And the reason I started the blog and wrote the book is because I am very much in favor of long-term sustainability rather than get thin quick solutions. So whenever at work someone says something is a bad idea, I'll always ask, well, what's your alternative approach? What do you recommend? So if I'm asking myself that question, or you might be asking that question, this is my approach: changes to small habits throughout the day. And you may think to yourself, well, how can making small changes actually make a difference if my goals are big? I'll tell you. So changing small habits is like a series of microtransactions. And for those of you who have an economic background or a business background, you probably understand this concept that, for example, when you download an app, the app developer may make no money from just that download of the app. But where they do make money is the microtransactions within the app, the small purchases and upgrades that over time make them billionaires. So think of yourself like that over time, all these small changes you make will have a huge return on your investment. So that is the background of what we're going to discuss. And let's just jump right into the habits, because we only have a certain amount of time here, and I know everybody is already very pressed for time. So the first habit I'd like to jump into is what happens when you wake up in the morning, because we all do the same thing. We all wake up in the morning, and how you set the tone for that day, how you start the morning, is like your North Star for how your whole day goes. So let's look at some usual habits on how people start their mornings. And I can say that, this is not unknown to me. And sometimes I still fall into this habit where you wake up and what may be the first thing you reach for? Your smartphone, right? And you look at it, there's a bunch of notifications, or maybe you just open up an app and just start, doing the scroll while you're still waking up. And so often people will check their email or their social media or other news feed. And this is a habit to consider changing. With regard to email, with regard to work emails, for example, usually these involve, some type of stress. We all have very busy and demanding jobs. So checking your work email in the morning is going to produce an adrenaline rush that might get you more energized, but it also is going to produce a stress response hormone called cortisol. And cortisol in some small amounts is good. In fact, it's a survival mechanism, but in excess amounts can actually cause a lot of anxiety and also weight gain, and in particular, storage of belly fat. Now, similar logic applies to social media. That's just an unnecessary distraction in the morning. I mean, do you really need to read about your cousin's Caribbean vacation on a Wednesday morning? All of that can wait for later, because the morning should be about your priorities and your health, both mental and physical. And same with the news. I mean, we all, need to know what's going on in the world, and some of us, our jobs depend on it, but news is often negative. So at least taking some space to allow some positivity in the morning before you start drinking from the fire hose is a great habit to have. So now, what kind of habit should you have in the morning? I like to think of it as the 3 M's: mindfulness, moving, and mapping out. So you don't have to do all 3 of these things every morning, but if you try doing at least one, your morning will start on a much more positive tone. So mindfulness entails meditation, and I have a whole post on my blog devoted to meditation, especially for people who are too busy to meditate. And really all you need is just a few minutes, and you can even meditate while you're in the shower. Some exercises like yoga are a form of meditation. So you can actually combine the first 2 M's just right there. With regard to movement, a lot of people, for example, like to exercise in the morning. I do sometimes if that's the best for my schedule, but I also bought into a school of thought for a long time that said exercising in the morning on an empty stomach was the best way to burn the most fat. And Netta, who's my co-editor and a trainer at Equinox, and she'll join us in future sessions. She's actually posting the links to some of the posts I'm mentioning in the chat, but she quickly debunked that for me, that there's no truth. And in fact, there's studies that support that a controlled group who exercise the same amount in a fed state actually lost about the same amount of weight over the period of the study. So that shouldn't be a driver of whether you move in the morning. A lot of it just goes upon like your energy level and what time you have in the day as you map out the day for workouts, which leads me to the 3rd M, is mapping out your day based on your priorities for the day. So planning is a very important part of fitting in fitness throughout your day. So I usually actually plan my week, including my workouts, the week before, but schedules are fluid. So at the beginning of the morning, I'll do a calendar scan and I'll look for lulls throughout the day on when can I, for example, fit in a workout, if it's as little as 10 minutes or if it's as much as half an hour or an hour. And there's always lulls throughout the day for all of us. I mean, this may be one for some of you because you're able to watch this, but typically the best times to take advantage for fitting in a workout are early in the morning or around lunchtime or late in the afternoon. I also see where I can combine some type of activity like walking with some of my calls. And I have a post about Zoom walking on the site. So for example, if there's a large call where you're a passive listener and you're not speaking, it's a training, you can also just dial in and you don't have to join through an app, or you can join through the app on your phone. You can totally Zoom walk, and it's a great way to burn a lot of calories, but also keep your energy up throughout the day. So those are the 3 M's for the morning that I recommend. So I'm going to move on to the next habit. And definitely, if you guys have comments, feel free to enter them, questions too. So the next habit is around time blocking. And there's definitely an art to this, and I am not the expert on it. But I will say that what I have learned is that it is very important to make sure that emails and message responses don't sabotage your time. And the best way to do that is to allocate certain blocks of time for dealing with these potential time suckers. So actually, an article in Forbes examined this very issue and found that most people waste at least 2.5 hours a day on email. And the reason that this can lead to a waste of time has to do with productivity. So for example, you probably have been in this situation. Like, say you're trying to work on a report or a project or something that requires concentration. You're working for 10 minutes and you're just starting to get into the zone. Then you hear a little ding, like it could be a chat message, it could be an email, it could be a text. You're distracted. You then drop what you're doing and you go and start the process of dealing with whatever that issue is. You go back to what you're doing, but because your concentration has been shot, essentially you're starting all over again. So this is why, instead of doing that, allocating time blocks, 1 or 2 in the morning, 1 or 2 in the afternoon, so you can mindfully actually respond and move things forward, is a better way than to constantly dictate your to-do schedule from your inbox. So let's move on to the third habit, which is what I call midday bust a move. I was actually recently reading an article from the BBC that said that midday working out is very beneficial for stress levels, especially in this sort of always available pandemic culture where a lot of us feel like we are chained to our desks and sort of never can turn off. Well, turning off is very important for sometime in the middle of the day because our bodies are like batteries. We really need to recharge. And so think about when you were a little kid and there was recess. I mean, that's a reason that kids have recess, is because they need some time to just take a break away from what they're doing and re-energize. And the same for you. Just because you grew up doesn't mean you don't need that break. And one great way to take that break is a midday workout. So there's a lot of strategies you can do to make the midday workout work that I'll share with you what I do. Like, the first is plan. So we went through this, planning when we talked about morning habits, but some other things you can do to make the midday workout easier, for example, is when you are allocating your time blocks for messages and emails. For example, what I like to do is I like to allocate one of those blocks shortly before a midday workout to move things along. And so while I'm doing that workout, the ball is in someone else's court. Then by the time I return, it's back in my court. So things are just moving around, at a really efficient pace. Another thing I like to do is I call it having a kit available at all times. So if you're working from home, make sure that you have a set of workout clothes and sneakers nearby. Even you can even lay them out fireman style next to you, so you can just like change very quickly. And this is actually also great to do even if you don't anticipate that you'll have time during the day. And this is because a lot of times unexpectedly meetings get canceled and time opens up. So you want to be able to take advantage of that as soon as you can. So that's another great way to do that. And, I know a lot of us are going back to the office, myself included. So I've definitely experimented with this midday workout in the same fashion. There's actually a gym very close to my office, our office downtown, and there's a gym actually in the office where people who work there get free access. So it's a great resource. So I take a small tote bag with the things I need for a workout, and I'm always ready to work out, even if I don't specifically plan for it. And even if you don't have a really big block of time, there's a lot of things that you can do in 5, 10, 15 minutes. Many workout apps, which I also discuss on one of my posts about the best fitness apps, are scalable. So they allow you to actually filter your search by a time block, or the most simple workout that you could possibly do that doesn't even require any thought is walking. Walking gets a bad rap, but I can't tell you how many stories I've heard of people who lost a lot of weight during the pandemic and have never felt better health-wise. And they've told me, I started walking. So walking definitely can go a long way. And if you can't do anything else in the middle of the day, consider taking your dog or going for a walk around the block. And even in the colder temps, it is nice to get, a blast of fresh air, and it definitely will reorient your perspective. So the next habit that I wanted to touch on is fitness is about what you do with your body physically, of course, but fitness is also about what are you putting into your body. So that leads me to the topic of food, and particularly, I know that there's breakfast and the whole intermittent fasting debate. I definitely don't have time to go into that now, but I will on a future session, especially if you guys like the idea. But in the middle of the day, again, we're like batteries. We need to recharge. So lunch is important. And I know that for me, for example, especially when I get very busy, there is a huge temptation to skip it or delay it. Like I keep saying to myself, after this call, no, after this call, no, after this call. And then before I know it, it's 3:30 or 4 o'clock. And then I'm just thinking, well, it's so close to dinner, I might as well just eat a light snack. And then, then I'll eat dinner, a proper meal when all my work is done. But what ends up happening is I end up overeating at dinner. And then even after I eat dinner, I'll want more food. And it's just like this insatiability that happens because I didn't eat enough during the day. And that again is supported by a study that compared two groups of people, one group who ate more earlier in the day versus one group who ate more, the same amount, but later in the day. And the group that ate later in the day gained significantly more weight. And this is because scientifically eating later throws off your circadian rhythms and also interferes with sleep. So the later you eat at night, the worse sleep you get. The earlier you eat during the day and the more quantity that you eat during the day, the better you'll sleep at night. So that is definitely advocacy for eating lunch, at least. Now, if we get past this threshold issue of actually eating lunch, the question is, what do I eat? And I mean, I've tried every approach, from drinking a smoothie to eating a protein bar to having a salad. And I find what works best is something that I can throw together very quickly. I have this blog post about it. I know it's starting to sound like I have a blog post for everything, but I try to think about everything. So I have a blog post for putting together meals very quickly. It's called The Little Black Dress of Meal Planning. And one little black dress that I really like for lunch is wraps. So you can make wraps like 100 different ways. And it can also be based on what kind of food craving you're having at the time. So if I'm having a sweet tooth at the time, I'll make a wrap with peanut butter and honey, for example. But if I want something more hearty and more salty, maybe I'll make a wrap with, turkey and cheese. I mean, you can literally make wraps 100 different ways. And it only takes about maybe a minute to make a wrap, and it takes only about 5 minutes to eat it. So that's a really excellent choice. And there's obviously a lot of other good ones. I plan on actually doing a post in the future about easy lunches, because I know a challenge is you may just think you don't have enough time, but the truth is you do. So the last habit that I wanted to go over is caffeine. So the reason I wanted to go over this is because, well, on East Coast time, it's almost 4 o'clock. I know some of you are on lunchtime, but around 2, 3 o'clock is when it's really tempting to have, a cup of coffee, or maybe you're a Diet Coke person. And I definitely love Diet Coke and I love coffee. But what I've learned is that having a cutoff time for caffeine intake is a good idea. And the sweet spot for that I read is recommended, but also that I've experienced myself, is around 1 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the reason is, if you have caffeine late in the afternoon, again, it interferes with your sleep. And so this affects both your mental acuity, but also a lack of sleep is scientifically linked to weight gain. And plus, you might feel a charge in the beginning, but then you'll just mentally crash. So you don't want that. So what could you do to energize instead of drinking caffeine? Well, one day, again, it's the midday movement. I mean, sometimes I found that when I'm going to go, for example, to Starbucks in the middle of the day, just the act of like going outside and walking gets me energized, and I don't even need the coffee. Or if you're a Diet Coke person, I mean, think about what you really want. Maybe what you really want is just a fizzy drink. And there's stuff you can do to substitute for that. For example, you could have a nice sparkling water. Or there's even a discovery I made recently is this line of drinks called Zevia. So basically, it's a sparkling flavored drink that doesn't have caffeine, that's sweetened with Zevia, and they actually have a cola flavor that tastes very close to Diet Coke. And they also have a Dr. Pepper flavor. So that's pretty amazing. And so, again, it's not about quitting anything cold turkey. I'm not going to tell you to quit caffeine or stop drinking Diet Cokes because they're bad for you. Because like I said, like I enjoy a Diet Coke, once in a while or a few times a week. I mean, we all put things in our bodies. Everything we put in our bodies is not going to be organic and perfect, but we can strive to make small changes to habits throughout the day, and then over time get a huge return on that investment. So I know I've talked a lot, and Netta, thanks so much for putting all those links in the chat. I'm happy to make anything available after this, of course. And I'm really excited for the next issue of the blog. We're actually going to be talking about Super Bowl strategies, because we know that's coming up, and that's definitely a time where there's a temptation, with food and drink and indulging. But we've been thinking about ways that you can still make this a fun day and also stay fit. So with that, I think, unless I don't see any other questions, but you guys are definitely welcome to get in touch with me after the broadcast. I think most of you know where to find me. I want to thank you again so much for coming. It's been such a pleasure. I will give you back 5 minutes from your day, and looking forward to seeing you on the next one, which we will announce on LinkedIn. Thanks, and have a fit and great rest of the day.